welcome to another episode of Dollar Dialogue. Today is episode 14, and our topic of discussion is South Africa's economic mosaic, balancing growth and inequality. And today we have a very special guest speaker, Mr. Makuei Majhok. He is currently a rising senior at the African Leadership Academy in Johannesburg, South Africa, but he's originally from Juba, South Sudan. He's a very talented student. I met him at the Yale Young Global Scholars YYGS at Yale, and he's a very talented student. He knows a lot of stuff about everything from science to economics to basically everything. And we are very happy to have Makuei here with us today. Makuei, would you like to add anything to the introduction that I just said?
Thank you, Malik, and thank you for the incredible introduction that you did. And it really meant a lot, like, to be here and to meet different people from a different part of the world and to really engage together. This topic about South Africa economic is really like a very broad topic, and it has a lot that you really contain in it. So South Africa is one of the African countries that has a labor system currently that's so democratic, even though like they face different challenges currently. So like the main thing that South Africa economic is facing, the government is adding many things to the people. Like the ruling party in South Africa currently that is called ANC. ANC is really dominant, and it's the only party that has been known and that has been ruling the country since the got independent in 1994. And many impact that they have done in the country, many people supported them, but also many people rejected them based on the things that they have done. South Africa once got affected by apartheid policy, and this is a very broad topic that South Africa was one colonized by the white. Africans were put into some dangerous ways of colonizing people. They were colonized in really like innovative ways. Their things were robbed. There was a real segregation that happened in South Africa that has affected the economy of South Africa up to this day. So like this is a intro about how South Africa came into existence, about how it was first colonized by the white, the guys that came from Netherlands, and then they became dominant in South Africa. They made a distinction between the white and the black. There were specific places that black need to live in, and specific places the white need to live in. And there are many things that white have access to, and there are many things that black don't even have access to. So I'm certain that this is just more about intro, but I will dive deep later. And I think like Malik is the one who's so strategic on how to run this. So I will give the floor back to you, Malik, and now we want to direct us on how to at least run this, and I'll come back.
Thank you, Makuei, for the very detailed introduction about South Africa. Again, everyone, today our episode is about episode 14. It's about South Africa's economic mosaic, balancing growth and inequality. Again, we have our special guest speaker, Makuei, and we have our usual hosts, Arif Malik and Shazib Karim. Now, Makuei has given us a little brief introduction about South Africa. Let me also add something to that. So, South Africa, as Makuei has highlighted, was originally inhabited by various indigenous groups, including Khoisan, which is also known as Khoi and San, and Bantu-speaking people. The Khoisans were hunter-gatherers, while the Bantu-speaking communities practiced agriculture and settled in various regions. And there were different indigenous groups in South Africa which developed rich cultural traditions, including rock art, oral histories, and complex social structures. And in the late 15th century, Portuguese explorers such as Bartolomeu Dias in 1488 and Vasco da Gama in 1497 sailed around the Cape of Good Hope, establishing sea routes to the East Indies. And the Dutch East India Company established a supply station at Cape of Good Hope in 1652 under John van Riebeeck, leading to the permanent European settlement in South Africa. And as Makuei has highlighted, there are also a lot of Dutch settlers in South Africa which came afterwards between the Dutch colonial period of 1652 to 1795, and they're still known in South Africa as Boers or Afrikaners, who expanded their territorial inland, leading to conflicts with many indigenous people and the Dutch also established a colony centered on Cape Town, and developed agriculture and trade. Then came the British who ruled from 1795 to around 1806, and the British seized the Cape Colony from the Dutch during the Napoleonic Wars in 1975, and again in 1806. The British aimed to control key maritime routes and influence the colony's economic development. And the British colonial period also saw further displacement of indigenous peoples and imposition of new administrative and legal systems. And then came the formation of the Union and also the apartheid era. The Union of South Africa, which was formed in 1910, which existed until 1948. It was formed The Union of South Africa was a self-governing dominion which was under the British Empire, and it united the colonies of the Cape, Natal, Transvaal, and the Orange Free State. It was also established as a constitutional monarchy with a parliamentary system. And there's obviously racial segregation in South Africa, the apartheid system, which is very known around the world. And the early 20th century in South Africa saw the formalization of racial segregation policies, including the introduction of laws restricting land ownership and political rights for non-white population. And in 1948, the South Africa government implemented the apartheid law, which was in existence until 1994. In 1948, again, the National Party, which was led by Daniel Francois Malan, won the general election and formally introduced the apartheid system, which was a system of institutionalized racial segregation and discrimination. And there were also key policies within this apartheid system. For example, the Popular Registration Act in 1950, which classified people into different racial groups, including black, white, colored, and Indians, and this enforced segregation. And there's also the Group Areas Act of 1950, which restricted non-white people, basically colored people like myself and black people, to specific areas and mandated residential segregation. And there's also the Bantu Education Act of 1953, which provided inferior education to black South Africans to reinforce the social and economic disparities, because the Bantu Education Act provided inferior education, low quality education to black South Africans, while high quality education was offered to white South Africans. And obviously this apartheid era obviously had a lot of resistance. The anti-apartheid movement, which was led by figures such as Nelson Mandela, Desmond Tutu, and organizations like the African National Congress (ANC), as Makuei has highlighted, and the Pan-Africanist Congress (PAC) fought against the regime. And notable events include the Sharpeville Massacre of 1960 and the Soweto Uprising of 1976. And there was obviously a lot of international pressures in South Africa. For example, the sanctions and international isolation intensified during the 1980s, which pressurized the South African government to negotiate. And then came the South Africa that we know today, which was the end of the apartheid era, and there was a transition to democracy. So the end of apartheid era, which was between 1990 to 1994, and in 1990, South African President FW de Klerk began negotiations to end apartheid, leading to the release of Nelson Mandela after 27 years in prisons. And the negotiations culminated in the first multiracial elections. And in 1994, South Africa held its first democratic elections, resulting in Nelson Mandela becoming the first black president and marking the official end of the apartheid. And the post-apartheid era of South Africa, which is from 1994 to present day. So in South Africa adopted a new constitution, democratic constitution in 1996, which enshrined human rights and equality. The constitution, considered one of the most progressive globally, included protection against discrimination and guarantees various civil rights. And despite political pressure, South Africa right now has also faced ongoing challenges, including high levels of inequality, unemployment, and crime. And economic growth has been variable, and issues such as corruption and inadequate infrastructure have impacted development. And there's also has been a lot of recent developments in South Africa. For example, efforts have been made to address economic disparities through policies such as broad-based black economic empowerment, BBBEE, and land reform programs. And the African National Congress (ANC) has dominated South African politics since 1994, but recent years have seen increasingly political fragmentations and challenges to the ANC's dominance. And also South Africa continues right now in the present day to with social issues, including high rates of HIV, AIDS, poverty, and educational disparities. The government, however, has introduced various social programs and initiatives to address these challenges. And the final thing is, yes, there has been growth in South Africa, but the growth has been centered in the white population, mainly the black population in South Africa presently are marginalized to the present day. There has been a lot of unemployment among the black youths, among the black population, which is very unfortunate. And that brings us to our topic of discussion today, which is South Africa's economic mosaic, balancing growth and inequality. So is there any opening, are there anything that Makuei, or Shazet, that you would like to add to the information that I've just said, or would you like to share any of your opinions?
Can you hear me?
Yes, Makuei, we can hear you fine. Go on.
Okay, thank you so much, Malik. You presented like the real history of South Africa, how it came into existence, and how South Africa has been, and the people who are still currently in South Africa. Okay, it has really been a good insight. I will appreciate it. I did not really that deep before. I just did kind of intro, but like now, I thank you. Like to everyone in the room, like it's a privilege like, to have you all here in the forum. So as you deal today with South Africa economic mosaic, which is balancing growth and inequality. Like in South Africa, there are many things that has really impacted like the economy that people have in South Africa, even though it seems like to be stable because the economy in South Africa is a bit stabilized. There are many people who are rich in South Africa that have money. So and people there's that imbalance that few people have in South Africa. There's a difference between the black and the white, which are Afrikaners that are called girls, and the white which are Dutch. So that's still different. Like now the majority in South Africa, we are rich in South Africa, the white, and the people who are that for the black. The government has tried in order to at least come up with different strategies in order to raise the financial status of the people in South Africa in order to at least come to the same average. But still, there are many inequalities that are still existing today. And those things are really rooted into apartheid. Like now we have one of the parties in South Africa called EFLF, which is Economic Freedom Fighters. This party has been headed by somebody called Julius Malema. So they are fighting for the freedom of South Africa. They are claiming that South Africa needs to at least look into itself and to make themselves stabilize. Like what Donald Trump came up with, which is called mega, making another greater day. That is what Mr. Malema is claiming in South Africa. Even though we lost election currently, so it's claiming that not only EFF, but the other parties that are really claiming the right of the minorities in South Africa. Like the main party that has affected and they are all rooted into apartheid. Like now currently if you go to Johannesburg, we have what is called the remembrance of apartheid. Like South Africa's deal after debated like the prison that people were jailing. Like that prison, I want to say one of the examples is Nelson Mandela. Nelson Mandela was jailed for 27 years. He lived in prison for 27 years. So in South Africa, there are so many things that acknowledges what apartheid did, the impact apartheid has done, and that impact of apartheid came up with many things. Like there were specific places that white need to live in that black cannot go into. If you go there, then from there you go up, you'll be killed. Or else they do something to you. Again, there were schools for the white and there were schools for the black. There were also hospitals for the white and also for Afrikaners. So there were many discrimination that existed in the country, and white specifically, okay, South Africa is one of the richest countries in minerals. They have many resources, but those resources are not used in a way that benefit everyone in the country. Even though like the government has established many of the things that supported the minorities in South Africa, still the same limitation that people don't reach. Like there are many people that live, okay, like open in South Africa. Their parents were killed in the apartheid policy, but like now the government doesn't even cater for them. So like what happened is that only like non-profitable organizations in South Africa that cater for those people. So like there are many inequalities that exist in countries in South Africa. South Africa is also one of the countries that has been affected by what is called land shedding. So load shedding in South Africa only happen like irregularly, can happen at any time. Once it happens, like it has like to shut down electricity, so you have to stay for some good time without having electricity. So it's one of the impact that South African people are having. So and the rate of the things in the market. So we have like a different rate that are affecting people who have like okay, we have inflation that is not that high, but it is still affecting the minority in the country. So like now currently in South Africa, like South Africa is having many resources that have been used in a different ways that are benefiting a specific people, and that has increased the extent of inequalities in the country. So it has also remained as a crucial thing that is affecting many of the people through the way that they generate their incomes, how they run their own businesses. Because in South Africa, if you are not that person who is having that this amount of money that you need to start a business that will cover a load that you will earn a lot from it, or like if you don't start that kind of stable business that people that people like to do the impact in the market, then still you can be out competed because there are some stable businesses that many people cannot even have in South Africa. So the GDP of the country is a bit high, but still many people are being affected by the country economy. So based on the crisis in the country and based on how imbalance has already been created, which is rooted in apartheid. And I think this is more about the insight of what is happening in South Africa currently. So at this point, I can say that like the player is something to like to at least either if the other idea that is coming from other people, or hell is the other inquiries that need to at least be answered. So thank you.
Thank you, Makuei, for that very elaborate and very detailed response. Now, Sajid Karim, would you like to share something?
No, I'd just like to say that Makuei, you gave some really interesting insights. So if you don't mind, I'd like to ask you a question too.
Okay, yeah, thank you. Welcome.
Yeah, so in your opinion, what policy changes or new initiatives do you believe are necessary to create more significant economic opportunities for more marginalized communities?
Okay, thank you so much. Like the marginalized communities in South Africa that have been affected by the crisis, and one of the things that is still rooted in apartheid is the way that the country has changed, and the many years the country has gone through without apartheid policy. There are still majority in South Africa, like the many minorities in South Africa that are really affected. So as somebody who has lived in South Africa, who has seen like many those ideas from different parties like the EFF, so this is what they really claim the right that they have to at least fund minorities, or like the using the country resources in order to at least elevate the rate of or the status of living of the people in the community, or like in South Africa currently. So, but like they did not really get a chance. Still, the election in there, they were out competed and did not get a chance to win. And Mr. Ramaphosa, which is the current president of South Africa currently, they are trying hard in order to at least elevate the expert in life to at least have that kind of rate that they will be balanced in the community, but still they don't reach because there are many expectations that ANC are working on that they are not targeting minorities who are living in South Africa in order to elevate the standards of living, in order to live comfortably and to at least enjoy and have the privileges that they need. If the national if you go to South Africa, there are many whites who are working for the black. There are many whites who are doing scholar job, but many Africans all they are doing that just like those small jobs that they cannot only sustain themselves, and they're not really earning a lot from it. So what I think about this basically is for the country to at least provide like the country is rich and there are militaries in South Africa. So if the country will focus on people by providing either startup capitals to people who be interested in businesses, either to at least support minorities in a different ways that they can elevate their own standard of living and to live compatibly and to reach the same, they want to reach the same level as other people who are rich in the country, then they'll be having at least such expectation that they will cover their own needs and the life will be stable. So all what that requires was that to at least it's for government to at least elevate the standard of living of minorities by providing either startup capitals Because like even countries, you can find like in South Africa, there are many places that are not well built. People are living in a remote areas. So, but for that to for change to happen, it's for this government okay, that will build estate and then we hold those people and then now we provide them either start either capital to start their own businesses or any budget that can allow them to at least have a kind of compatible life that will be at least to some standard. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Makuei, to answer the question. And I think to add my own opinion on that, I'd also say that investing in education is crucial, and improving the quality of education, particularly in underserved areas, can equip young people with the skills needed to compete in the job market, right? And also, not only that, if we look at the economic policies and support for small businesses, I'd say that providing more support for small businesses can create job opportunities within communities. And this includes easier access to financing, business development services, and mentoring. And also simplifying regulatory requirements and reducing hurdles for starting and running businesses can also encourage entrepreneurship.
Okay, I thank you for the insight, but I want to also add some more things into what you said. Okay, like countries in South Africa is one of the countries in Africa which is having a good educational system. So they have established the kind of education, the kind of system that that say everyone, regardless of who you are. But at some extent, that some of the people cannot afford. Okay, in that way, the now country will be able to elevate, but they are having like a great standard education. The problem that comes in it after graduation in South Africa is really very hard for many people to at get job. So and getting employment opportunities sometimes is that limited in the country. So yes, in that context that you talked about is really very crucial if the government will be able to provide either for unemployed people and to at least plan a small business in order to at least start and then and to also at least create employment opportunities that will provide many people in South Africa, then they will be able to at least change their own stuff. Okay. Yeah, thank you.
Hi, Makuei. It's nice to meet you. So, I also have a question like Shazib. So, like you have been living in South Africa for like quite some time now. So, I also like did a research on South Africa like 6 months ago, and in my research in history, like I was talking. I researched about South Africa and I saw about like the corruption in South Africa, which was before and also after the end of apartheid. So like in South Africa, the corruption even during like the presidency of Jacob Zuma is often like cited as the period during which corruption reached unprecedented levels, and the term state capture became widely used to describe the extensive corruption during this period where like there was private interests like those of the Gupta family in South Africa which influenced government decisions to benefit their business interests, and also like key state institutions like Eskom and Tasnet were also compromised, leading to widespread public outcry. So my question to you, Makuei, is as a resident of like South Africa, how do you think like corruption is? Do you think corruption is more or less now after the end of apartheid regime? And do you think like the corruption in South Africa can decrease, or do you think any other action is necessary?
Okay, thank you so much for the good insight. Honestly, you are somebody who has really insight a lot. Like you really got an insight about the economy in South Africa and about how corruption is in South Africa. Since from the independence of the country in 1994, and we started having Nelson Mandela as the president in South Africa, everything started well. Nelson started to decolonize the Africans in order to have that kind of mind and to at least be stable, to stabilize the country and to at least people the Africana, which are boys or which are black people, to at least have that kind of living standard that white have to at least reduce inequalities in the country. But it happens in many ways that they tried so much in order to at least bring the balance closer and to at least remove the memories that were created by the apartheid. So, and it did a lot of really impacted many people in South Africa. When some came in, so like there were like some changes that they also did, but in one way or the other, countries became corrupt. The people in the government they started to use resources. They use resources for their own benefit. And they are from ANC. So that ANC party, they work tightly, a little bad for the country, but on the other hand, they also like move resources for the country. And also in the period of Jacob Zuma, as you have already said, true. Honestly, Jacob Zuma was also accused of corruption. Many people call him a corrupt guy because there were many things that people did not even know where accountability is. So many sources, they were like they were nowhere to be seen. Many people that were coming into the country, like some of the money were looted, and people really are kind of receive, and they even shocked him, and that people even went to parliament because he has already, has already plotted corruption according to how they said it, and it was a bit right. And also in the period of Ramaphosa, so Ramaphosa has also been accused as somebody who has also been corrupt. That factor has also I also gone like to many people. Okay, like it has also impacted many people in South Africa in different ways. And currently, I believe one of the prominent parties in South Africa that is called EFF. I believe in that party that really rooted in something that can elevate the living standards in South Africa, that can indicate the corruption that people have. Okay, to honestly, before apartheid. Okay, like during apartheid policy, corruption was really high because only it favored because the country only favored the white people, but like after apartheid, it decreased. It decreased to some good extent that the living standard between the two people became a bit balanced, but like not that at all. But like again, after some good years recently, so that many people were accused in the government about the corruption, about what they did because South Africa is a democratic country, that everything can be said in the parliament. There's a right of speech. So with that freedom that you can speak out what you want to say, you can even question the government. So with that kind of discussion that are done in parliament. So in some other country, there's what is called that party. I believe in that party that really for change. They believe that economic stability in South Africa depends on South African people. So another party currently is to remove a corrupt regime, which is a ANC party. Currently, Ramaphosa has left ANC and he can use his own party, which is MP. So he can use his own party. Recently, during the election, this party did not succeed. But I believe that the vision that EFF has, so they have the vision that at least a cooperative will be eradicated from the government and to at least stabilize everyone in the country, to at least use the material resources that the country has in order to at least benefit its own citizens. So currently, I believe the reform that are needed in South Africa is to at least have that kind of stability to bring in people who will be supported, the people of the country will be paying up, the mode of accountability, we will at least build everything in fair manner and to provide for the people of the country without being corrupt. So South Africa now is corrupt, but like not that extent before, but to at some point, but they are still being accused. So I believe like in some years or like in forthcoming election, then ENC might lose the trust of the South African people because they are accused of corruption, and the corruption in South Africa currently is not that high. It is minimal. Okay, it happens like that cannot be known by everyone. Just trace out by own individuals, which are parties like EFF. So there's some changes that need to be done by South African people, like when we change the regime and have a new regime when we change the economy of the country. Thank you.
Yeah, Makuei, thank you for your insights. And Arib, also, if you don't mind, I'd also like to add my opinion on it. And Arib, I know in your question, you said you asked him as a resident of South Africa. I'd say, like, even though I'm not a resident, obviously, I'd still like to give my perspective on it, right? So I'd say that to give my opinion on it, I'd say that implementing transparency measures in government operations and public spending can reduce opportunities for corruption. And this includes open data initiatives where government contracts, budgets, and expenditures are made publicly available. And also an independent and well-resourced judiciary is crucial for prosecuting corruption cases effectively. Ensuring that the legal system is free from political influence and corruption itself is fundamental. And not only that, also educating the public about the detrimental effects of corruption and encouraging civic engagement can build a culture of accountability. And when citizens are informed and active, they're more likely to demand transparency and integrity from their leaders. So supporting civil society organizations that monitor government activities and advocate for anti-corruption measures can help hold officials accountable. Yeah.
Thank you, Shazad, Makuei, and Ari for the very elaborate discussion. Now let's move a little back and discuss the reason why South Africa is so economically. It is economically one of the richest countries in Africa, no doubt. But why South Africa has such a big wealth disparity? One of the reasons we have talked about is the apartheid era, which enforced racial segregation and discrimination, which obviously limited the opportunities for Black South Africans. And the laws such as we have talked about, such as the Group Areas Act, restricted Black people to designated areas with limited resources. And Black South Africans were obviously severely restricted in land ownership. For instance, under the Native Land Act of 1930, Black people were confined to 7% of South Africa's land, contributing to long-term disparities in wealth accumulation. And obviously, despite the end of the apartheid in 1994, the economic legacy persisted. The wealth gap between Black and white South Africans remains substantial due to the historic accumulation of wealth by white families. And as of 2023, the average income for white South Africans was approximately 418,000 South African rands per year. 480,000 South African rands per year, compared to the earnings compared to the earnings of Black South Africans, which is only 103,000 South African rands per year. Just imagine the gap in the earnings. Has a gap of around 300,000 South African rands, which is obviously a lot of money. While a South African white person earns around 480,000 per year in South African money, South African rands, a Black person in South Africa only earns 103,000 South African rands per year, and this highlights a significant income gap. And the top 10% of RMs in South Africa are predominantly white, which earn more than the bottom 50% combined, which includes many Black South Africans. And now we have the unemployment rate. I'm sure all of you know South Africa has one of the highest youth unemployment rate in the world. The unemployment rate in South Africa among Black South Africans is around 34% compared to about 7% for white South Africans. The high unemployment rate means that the high employment among Black individuals reflects systematic barriers to employment, and Black South Africans are overrepresented in lower paying jobs and informal sectors. For example, many work in low-wage sectors such as domestic work and agriculture, whilst white South Africans are more likely to hold higher-paying jobs and formal sector jobs. And then there we have the wealth statistics, the asset ownership. White households in South Africa hold approximately 70% of the country's wealth, while Black households hold less than 5%. This disparity is due to historical asset accumulation and the exclusion of Black South Africans from wealth-building opportunities. And then we have the property ownership. Only about 30% of South Africans own property only about 30% of Black South Africans own property compared to 70% of white South Africans. And property ownership is a major factor in wealth accumulation and generational wealth transfer. And then we have in the business sector, white South Africans own a disproportionate share of businesses. For instance, white individuals own approximately 80% of all registered businesses, while Black South Africans face barriers to entry and ownership. And this is a very key measure. White South Africans own 80% of all registered businesses, which means they make most of the money that is to be made in South Africa, and they contribute the most to the GDP. And there's also the tertiary education factor. About 30% of white South Africans hold tertiary education qualification compared to only 10% of Black South Africans. And educational disparities contribute to differences in income and employment opportunities. And schools in predominantly Black areas often have fewer resources and lower educational outcomes compared to those in predominantly white areas. And the skills gap between Black and white South Africans is significant. White South Africans generally have access to better training and development opportunities, which translates to higher paying prospects. And then we also have the financial services sector. Black South Africans have had limited access to financial services and capital. For example, they're less likely to have access to credit, which limits their ability to start or expand businesses. And wealth inheritance is also skewed towards white families due to historical asset accumulation, which perpetuates the wealth gap across generations. And then we have the economic policies such as the broad-based black economic empowerment (BBBEE). While BBBEE aims to address economic disparities, its effectiveness has been limited. The policy has also faced criticism for benefiting only a small number of well-connected black individuals rather than addressing system disparities. And then we have also the land distribution, which was done by the government. Efforts to address land equality through land reforms have faced challenges. For instance, the land ownership program aimed to transfer 30% of agricultural land to black ownership by 2014, but their progress had been slow and often criticized for inefficiencies. And the South African government also had a lot of social grants, which provided various social grants aimed at elevating poverty. While these grants help, they do not fully address the root cause of wealth disparity and often leave beneficiaries in a cycle of poverty. And then we have the economic divide. For example, in Johannesburg, areas like Sandton, which is a wealthy suburb, contrast sharply with townships like Soweto. And Sandton features high-end businesses and luxury homes, while Soweto faces higher property tax and fewer economic opportunities. And there are obviously some black success stories in South Africa. Black entrepreneurs such as Patrice Motsepe and Tokyo Sexwale have achieved significant success. However, these individuals are obviously rather exceptions than the norm and do not fully reflect the broader economic reality faced by the majority of black South Africans. And obviously, we have other statistics. South Africa's Gini coefficient stands at 0.60, which is one of the highest in the world, which reflects extreme income inequality. And approximately 55% of black South Africans live below the national poverty line, compared to only 10% of white South Africans. And as I said before, roughly 30% of black South Africans own homes compared to 75% of white South Africans. And so this is, as I've said before, our topic of discussion was again episode 14, South Africa's economic mosaic, balancing growth and inequality. And all of the information that I've shared highlights a very unequal South Africa, where the white majority own a lot of wealth, own a lot of income, have a lot of more opportunities than black South Africans. So is there any opinions or are there any information that you would like to add to the information that I've just said? Makuei, Arif Malik, or Shazib?
Yeah, if I'd like to add on to what you said. So I'd say that whilst there were improvements in infrastructure and the high burgeoning middle class, high unemployment rates and slow GDP growth rates have persisted, particularly affecting the black population, as you said, Araf. And I'd say that the labor market in South Africa also reflects significant disparities. High levels of unemployment, particularly among the youth and black population, exacerbate wealth inequality. And structural unemployment and a mismatch between skills and job requirements are major issues. Additionally, informal employment often lacks the benefits and security of formal jobs, contributing to economic instability for many households. And also, if you look at land and housing, land ownership and housing are also critical components of wealth disparity. Land reform policies have struggled to effectively redistribute land, leaving many without access to this vital asset. Because access to affordable and secure housing remains a challenge, with many people living in informal settlements with limited service and infrastructure.
Yeah, and to add on to Shazib, I would also like to say that I have like some statistics that I would like to share, which I researched before the podcast. So, like during apartheid, the economic policies were very bad because they were only designed to favor the white minority in South Africa, which created the vast wealth disparities. Like in 1994, as apartheid ended, the Gini coefficient of South Africa was 0.59, indicating that there was severe income inequality. But in 2023, the Gini coefficient is still 0.63, which means that the wealth disparity still hasn't improved that much over the past 20 years. And not only that, there's a wealth disparity as well that I would like to share. Like the disparity extends beyond the wealth and asset ownership in South Africa, because according to a 2019 report by the World Inequality Lab, the top 10% of South Africans own more than 85% of the country's wealth, while the bottom 60% control just 7%. So this means that the land ownership is particularly a contentious issue because South Africa is a country where agriculture is very dependent, and also like I would like to talk about the education. Like in South Africa, education is a key determinant of economic mobility, which also starts disparities. While like South Africa spends like a substantial portion of its GDP on education, which is like around 6% in 2021, the outcomes are poor, and it doesn't help the South Africans who are particularly poor. Most of the time it helps the rich South African, which is the issue. According to a 2016 report by the Human Research Council, only 4% of Black South Africans obtain a university degree compared to the 28% of South Africans who are white. So this educational gap is also something that we'd like to talk about. So given this, I would like to ask Makuei a question. So given the economic disparities in South Africa, Makuei, particularly in the education sector where only the wealthy and small elite are able to access education, what policies do you think the South African government needs to implement? Because there's a lot of policies that are currently in place, but it is not really helping the poorer South Africans. So what do you think South Africa needs to do differently?
Okay, thank you so much for the question. And before like I go to that directly, I would also love like to pass out the insight based on how the thing that the government need to do so that they will be stabilized. One of the things is that to ensure a tax system are fair, free of a loophole, so that the richest pay their fair share. Then also there is a need for government to make sure that everyone has a decent job with a fair pay. So when everyone is paid equally with a good rate of employment opportunities, then people will be able to at least provide for themselves and have a stability lab that they need to have. Secondly, I also like way that the government of South Africa will also ensure economic policies work together to close the gap between women and men. There is that gender equality that exists in South Africa, and if that gap has been closed, then it will be able to at least eradicate the inequalities that people have in the country. And then to at least for the government to prioritize the own citizen, they work for the benefit of the country and the citizen they live in. Based on the question that you asked, to go back to it, I'll answer by saying that what the government needs to do is to at least invest a tax revenues, invest the tax revenues, and also national resources that the country has, okay, to at least provide a vital public services like universal health care. So if the government has implemented like a health care that will have insurance that everybody will be having access to medicine, then be able to provide the standard of living that people need, and to at least also provide a good education in the country. So the big policy that the country will do is to at least have a exact budget that the country will allocate for the education system that be able to support the minorities in the country, that provide for the poor, so that they will elevate their own standard of living, have access to the education as much as they want, and then it will be able to elevate the literacy rate of the country, and then the rate of standard in the country will be elevated, and the balance will also be created, and then there will be no that inequality much in the country. I hope I answered you correctly. Oh, like yeah, I have bad legs. Okay.
Yeah, thank you, Makuei. I understand. Makuei, could you also like share insight about the health inequalities in South Africa? So, like in the United States, there is like the Affordable Care Act or like Obamacare, in which the citizens are required by law to buy insurance at a fixed cost, so the insurance companies don't do price discrimination. And as a result of this, all the American citizens can afford can pay for healthcare insurance, and if not, the government provides subsidy. But in South Africa, there is not really a plan like this. So is the inequality in South Africa, particularly in the health sector, as bad as the educational sector, or is it like slowly improving?
Okay, in South Africa, they see, okay, I thank you for the insight that you first provided. Of course, like countries have a different system that they have. Regardless of country having their own hospitals that are provided by the government, you see they still that inequality that people are having in the country. People are being affected by different types of diseases that they have in the communities, but there is no that stabilized insurance that provide the cover for the people of the country, that cover for the citizen. Even though like the country claims in order to provide for each one citizen, there is no health insurance that has been picked by the country that caters, okay, that implement the policy that say that country cares for each people by providing the health care. So it does not at all. So like when people seek their own treatment, personally using their own incomes, okay, or like paid and basically they still cater for themselves. So they still that rate in South Africa that they can't mind about their own citizens belongs to the extent that it provides everything that citizens need. Okay, in the parliament we discuss regularly that country need to implement many policies around providing its own citizens with a high quality education that people want to provide them is stable healthcare that they be able to at least access. But like now countries in South Africa, those things are not being implemented. Even though they are said frequently, people don't have access to them. They still pay for them and they still to cater for their own. If you don't have like access to a good medical care, then you will not be able to at least have adequate treatment that you need. Then at the end of the day, you might even lose your life or have like you live in that critical condition that you are really affected, and the country cannot do anything. If the government in the country establish a format of at least providing some grant to the people, okay, to the locals, then still it doesn't satisfy the basic need that people want in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Makuei, Arif, and Shazia for all the information that has been shared. Now let's talk about a little bit about South Africa's economy in general. We have talked about the inequality of South Africa. Now let's talk about the growth of South Africa, because again, our episode 14, South Africa's economic mosaic, is about balancing growth and inequality. I believe we have touched a lot about inequality. Let's talk about a little bit of South Africa's growth. The economy of South Africa is a mixed economy, emerging market, and upper middle income country economy, one of the only such 8 countries in Africa. The economy is the most industrialized, technologically advanced, and diversified in Africa. Following 1996, which was the end of the apartheid, at the end of over 12 years of international sanctions, South Africa's national GDP almost tripled to a peak of $416 billion in 2011. In the same period, foreign exchange reserves increased from 3 billion to nearly 50 billion, creating a diversified economy with a growing and sizable middle class with 3 decades of ending apartheid. And South Africa has a population of around 62 million people, and the GDP is around $373 billion as of right now in nominal terms, and it's the 36th largest economy in the world. And the GDP normally of South Africa is around $6,000, and which is the in terms of GDP per capita, that's $6,000, which is the 89 most richest country in the world. The inflation in South Africa is controlled to some extent. It's around 5% as of 2024, and around 30% of South Africans live less than $1.90 a day, and the Gini coefficient, as we have talked about, is very high. It's around 61.8, which is one of the highest in the world, and the youth unemployment and everything is around 44%, and the unemployment in general is around 2.1%. And the main industries in South Africa include it's one of the world's largest producer of platinum group metals, gold, chromium, automobile manufacturing, and these are some of the industries South Africa is famous for: automobile manufacturing, metalworking, technology, machinery, textiles, iron and steel, IT, chemicals, fertilizer, food manufacturing, and commercial ship repair. And South Africa's main trading partners are China, Germany, US, Japan, and India. And some of the goods are exported usually are gold, diamonds, wine, iron ore, platinum, non-ferrous metals, electronics, machinery, manufacturing equipment, motor vehicles, and fruits. And while they import many other things such as chemicals, petroleum products, scientific instruments, and food. And so that's basically the composition of South Africa's economy. And talking about the economy in general in South Africa, from 1994 to 2000, the average economic growth of South Africa was around 3.5% per year, driven by reforms and increased investor confidence. And during the late 1990s, South Africa experienced economic expansion with GDP growth reaching 4.2%. in 1996, and South Africa benefited from the high global commodity prices, particularly for gold, platinum, and other minerals. For instance, platinum prices increased significantly during this period, boosting the mining sector, and the economy grew robustly with GDP growth averaging around 4 to 5% annually from 2003 to 2007. In 2006, the economy expanded by 5.6%. And there's also significant investments made in infrastructure, including roads, railways, and telecommunications. The 2010 FIFA World Cup, which was in South Africa, also led to substantial infrastructure upgrades, such as new stadiums and improved public transportation system. And obviously, the global financial crisis of 2008 led to a sharp slowdown, with the economy contracting by 1.7% in 2009. The crisis affected key sectors such as mining and manufacturing, and the post crisis recovery. South Africa's economy gradually recovered after the recession, Great Recession of 2009, with GDP averaging around 2 to 3% per year from 2010 to 2019, and the growth peaked at 3.3% in 2011, but slowed in subsequent years due to various challenges. In 2012, the government introduced the National Development Plan, which was aimed at addressing key challenges such as unemployment, poverty, and inequality. The plan outlines goals for infrastructure, education, and economic growth, and the government also implemented various reforms to improve the business environment, including efforts to streamline regulations and improve ease of doing business. And there are obviously other challenges in South Africa, as Makuei has highlighted. Persistent power shortages, particularly from the 2014 onwards, due to issues with Eskom, the state-owned electricity provider, led to frequent load shedding and negatively impacted economic growth. And there also has been corruption scandals and political instability, particularly during the tenure of President Jacob Zuma, which contributed to economic uncertainty and undermined investor confidence. And obviously, due to the COVID-19 pandemic, led to a severe economic turndown in 2020, with GDP contracting by 7% due to lockdown, reduced economic activity, and global disruptions. And the government implemented stimulus measures and economic recovery plans to address the impacts of the global pandemic, including supports for business and social grants. And as of 2023, South Africa's GDP growth was approximately 2.1%, reflecting ongoing challenges such as global economic conditions, power shortages, and structural issues with the economy. And the service sector remains the largest contributor to GDP, followed by industry, including mining and agriculture. And the unemployment rate in South Africa, as I've said before, is very high, around 34%, with youth unemployment being around 60%, which is a very bad thing, a negative thing. And this, for this reason, there's also a lot of problem leading to jobs. And South African, as I said, because of the World Cup, there has been a lot of infrastructure development, and the mining sector in South Africa contributed around 8% to GDP and was a major export earner, with platinum and gold being key commodities. And there has been access to problem in access to basic services, which varied significantly between urban and rural areas, with disparities in electricity, water, and sanitation access. So this is a very brief history of South Africa's economy. So are there any information or any opinions that you would like to add to the things that I've just said, Makuei, or Malik, or Shazib Karim?
Yeah, to add on to what you said, I'd say that to add on to the information that you've added, Araf, to add my own opinion, I'd say that following the, like you talked about the mining industry, right? So I'd say that the mining industry was pivotal in South Africa's early economic development, as it attracted significant foreign investment and led to the establishment of infrastructure such as railways and ports, which were crucial for economic expansion. And this period of industrialization laid the foundation for South Africa's modern economy, setting the stage for further growth and diversification. And the transition to democracy in 1994 marked a new chapter for South Africa, with significant economic reforms aimed at fostering growth and inclusivity. And the Reconstruction and Development Program, RDP, was one of the first initiatives introduced by the new government. And following the RDP, the Growth, Employment, and Redistribution Strategy, which is signified as GEAR in short, it's called GEAR, and this strategy in 1996 further promoted economic stability and growth through fiscal discipline, trade liberalization, and infrastructure investment. GEAR played a crucial role in stabilizing South Africa's economy and attracting foreign investment, and this period saw substantial improvements in infrastructure and a burgeoning middle class. And the early 2000s were marked by significant economic growth, driven by a global commodity boom and sound policies and sound macroeconomic policies. South Africa experienced robust GDP growth rates during this period. and the commodities boom, particularly in gold and platinum, as Araf had mentioned, played a major role in boosting South Africa's economy.
Yeah, Shazib,
Uh,
oh yeah, Makuei. Yeah, continue.
Okay, thank you, Araf and Shahul. Like you guys have really provided a greater insight. So, like in South Africa currently, the country has not been the way it is. Okay, but many things that are happening in the country since the freedom of speech, the people discuss everything in the parliament, and tightly, and the government has been mandated in order to dysfunction and align with what the constitution said in order to provide their own citizens with what they need. Country like in South Africa, the GDP of the country, okay, is expected to be 0.9, and in 2024, like the growth is expected to at least be 1.3%, and in 2025 it will also be expected to at least reach up to 1.6%. So there's that rate of increase that the country is really working toward in order to at least elevate the living standards in the country, to at least elevate to some economic instabilities in the country that will be able to favor everyone. Okay, regardless of who you are, whether minorities or majorities in the country. So it's currently solved. I believe that solved that we will have a crucial step that they will elevate the living standard, and the minorities will not be affected that much before during the apartheid period and also during this regime, because the country has people we are really taking them okay, we are really holding them accountable, that they have to at least be abided by what everything, by what the laws say, and by what the laws require out of them. So I believe that the GDP of South Africa will have that kind of stability, will have growth, and they will be kind of the standard of living that the country will reach throughout these years. Thank you.
Yeah, and to add on to some of the economic challenges and stagnation of South Africa, and that I would like to talk about is like despite the early successes, South Africa's economic growth actually began to slow down in the late 2000s, which was again exacerbated by the global financial crisis of 2008 and 2009, and the economy of South Africa like sharply contracted, with the GDP growth falling to 1.5% in 2009, and the recovery was very slow, and the subsequent to 2010 decade was also marked by sluggish growth, averaging just around 2% per year, which is good. If you if Which is good. 2% is not bad, but like since South Africa is like a developing country, it should be higher compared to other developing countries. And like the high levels of unemployment among the youth is one of the challenges of South Africa, where like the global where like the official unemployment rate stands at like 32.6% with the youth unemployment rate exceeding like 55%. So like the South Africa is a huge labor force, and the labor market is there, but like the unemployment rate is an issue that needs to be addressed. However, I think in recent years the government has taken steps to revive the economic growth. Like if I'm not mistaken, President Cyril Ramaphosa, who took office in 2018, had prioritized economic reform, anti-corruption measures, and the infrastructure measurement investment, and the economic reconstruction and the recovery plan, which was the ERRP, launched in 2020, also had stimulus efforts which helped to digitally transform South Africa, as well as help small and medium sized enterprises. And based on this facts, and there's also another fact that there's a opportunity growth for South Africa in the renewable energy sector as well, which is driven by South Africa's abundant natural resources, which offers potential for economic development and environmental stability. And also in the African continent, South Africa is one of those countries where the financial services and the banking sector is very sophisticated, which makes South Africa a very good place for international, or at least domestic businesses, and businesses all across Africa. And based on this, there's also one structural problem within South Africa, which is the high unemployment among the youth. So given this fact, I would like to ask Makuei, like, what do you think the main core reason of high youth unemployment rate is? Because the youth in South Africa are studying, they're very studious, and like they're all of them are passing high school or at least going to college, but the youth unemployment rate is still very high. So what do you think is going wrong with South Africa in the youth unemployment, or at least the youth employment sector, which is causing these high unemployment numbers among the youth?
Okay, thank you so much, Aviv, for the great insight that you have provided. It is really valuable, so really appreciate it, that insight. So you will cover a lot. Based on the question that you asked, so basically in South Africa, in the country currently, majority of the industries are being owned by the white, and still, even though the apartheid has still gone, there's still the discrimination that is still existing currently in South Africa. If the white and the blacks are going for a job to the company that has been owned by the white, is at the end of the day, the one that will be employed is the white person. So in South Africa, even though like apartheid has gone, there's still that rate of discrimination that is still happening in the country. So majority of the business sectors are being owned by the white. So, and why they are being prioritized giving employment opportunities to white as an Afrikaners. So this is what they have, because this is what they are doing currently in South Africa. Only you find that it is very rare in South Africa to at least find many black people working under white in certain business sector, okay? Because there's only that rate of discrimination that is happening. But though that apartheid has gone, there's that discrimination. So what I think around this is for a country to at least look into youth policies to at least cater or to introduce the policies around establishing the employment opportunities that will be able to employ the high number of youth. Because if many youths are employed by the government, then there won't be that segregation, there won't be that discrimination in the government, and then there will be that certification of giving a job, or like having a job opportunity that you will work under. So currently in the country, if the country will not look into deeply, because if you read, like the black people are having 34% of unemployed people, and the white are having 7%. You know why this is happening? It is because of the discrimination that started during apartheid. It is still happening up to date. And the white people are the ones who are having, okay, who are the richest in the country. Many people are having a lot of money, which are white, okay. They have many industries, they have many business sectors that are working currently in the country. So if the country will work around implementing the business that will be implementing opportunities that will be able to provide or to cater for the youth, regardless of who you are, either black or white, then from there it will stabilize the rate of employment, in the country. Thank you.
Thank you, Makuei, Arif Malik, and Shazib Cohen for all the opinions that you have shared. Now, also, let's talk about some of the things that South Africa is very good at. And so, first of all, South Africa is a member of a lot of trade organizations. For example, the African Union, the World Trade Organization, the BRICS, the African Continental Free Trade Area, or AFCFTA, the G20, and the Southern African Customs Union, SACU, and many others. And the South African economy obviously is an economy with extreme socioeconomic inequality, weak management of utility services, and corruption. And although the natural resource extraction industry remains one of the largest in the country, with contribution with an annual GDP contribution of around $13.5 billion, the economy of South Africa has diversified since the end of the apartheid, particularly towards services. In 2019, the financial industry contributed around $41.4 billion to South Africa's GDP, and in 2021, South Africa-based financial institution managed more than $1.41 trillion in assets, and the total market capitalization of the Johannesburg Stock Exchange is around $1.28 trillion as of October 2021. And this number highlights that South Africa is it's a financial hub in the African continent, because because it has a lot of you can say influence and a lot of money under management, and the state-owned enterprises of South Africa play a significant role in the country's economy, with the government owning a share in around 700 state-owned enterprises, and they're involved in a wide array of government industries. In 2016, according to business executives, the top five challenges of doing business in the country were obviously inefficient government bureaucracy, restrictive labor regulation, a shortage of skilled workers for high-tech industries, political instability, and high corruption. And these are obviously things that we've talked about. On the other hand, the country's banking industry was rated as a strong positive feature of the economy. The nation is among the G20, which is basically an organization with the which has countries who have a lot of influence over the world, and the 20 biggest economies in the world, and it's the only African country that is a permanent member of the group, which highlights that the country which highlights that South Africa is also obviously a leader in Africa when it comes to finances, when it comes to political and economic matters. And the principal trading partners of South Africa we have talked about, beside African nation, include all over the world, include Germany, the United States, China, Japan, the UK, Bangladesh, and Spain. And chief exports include corn, diamond, foods, gold, metals, and minerals, sugar, and wool, which highlight that South Africa has a diversified economy, which is obviously a good thing. But there are also other things that other things in South Africa which is pretty good, which I've talked about, such as corruption. But South Africa has also other things to work on, such as the basic services. For example, a lot of people in South Africa unfortunately do not have access to clean water, and crime is also a very major and severe constraint on investment in South Africa. And the crime is actually put the fourth most frequently maintained constraints about the which limits South Africa's growth, which is very unfortunate. South Africa has a lot of crime, which is also very unfortunate. And so these are some of the things that South Africa is good and bad at, and these are overall economy of South Africa. And so, is there any final things that you would like to share to our discussion, Makuei, Arif Malik, or Shazib Kari?
Okay, thank you, Malik. You like about much insight. Much insight. Then we need like further discussions. Okay, when like in South Africa, the country has been affected by the economic crisis, and they like is doing it because we want to elevate the standard life. The people need to at least live comparatively and earn everything that they need. So, this like can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, good. Okay, yeah, this far like the reason that South Africa has been affected. Okay, you know, like when people in South Africa they still lack all what they require, even though like government implement in their own policies that is cut off for their own people and to buy the thing that they need, and at the end of the day that they don't get or they don't hand everything that they want. So the dollar crisis in the country has also affected the rate, and there's a big inflation that has been considered in the country. But the rate of which change has gone to the extent that people never expect it to be. So basically, I don't really like have much insight. So yeah. Anybody can hear Arif or Shazib?
Shazib and Arif, would you like to add anything to the things that I've said about South Africa's economy, which is obviously South Africa's economy in Africa is doing very well, and obviously the economic you can say inequalities, but South Africa's economy in Africa is doing very well. And as we have talked about, some of the key things that South Africa has done include joining the World Trade Organization in 1995, which has facilitated its integration into the global economy, and its foreign reserve has increased from around 3 billion in 1990s to over 50 billion, which is a lot of money. And so South Africa, as we have talked about, it has a very you could say a very a stable or a very influential stock exchange, the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, which highlights that the economy of South Africa is not bad when looking when looking from the African perspective. And so, is there any opinions that Arif Shazib that you would like to share?
Yeah, sure.
Go forward.
Okay. Yeah, thank you, Arif. Thank you. Yeah, I'd just like to add like maybe some brief insights. Like Arif, you were talking about the organizations that South Africa is a part of, right? And to like add on to add on to your points about the organizations, I'd say that if you look at the African Union, the AU is a continental body consisting of 55 member states, including South Africa, aimed at promoting unity and development across Africa. And South Africa has been a key player in the AU, contributing to peacekeeping missions and conflict resolution efforts, and the country has also been active in promoting economic integration and sustainable development across the continent. And also, South Africa's leadership within the AU is evident in its efforts to foster political stability and economic cooperation among African nations. And if we also look at another organization that South Africa is a part of is the Southern African Development Community, or the SADC. So if we look at the South African Development Community, regional organization. It's a regional organization aimed at promoting economic development, peace, and security in Southern Africa. And South Africa is a founding member of SADC and has also played a crucial role in advancing regional integration and economic growth. And the country's strong manufacturing and financial sectors have contributed significantly to intra-regional trade and investment. And through SADC, South Africa has been instrumental in developing infrastructure projects that enhance connectivity and trade within the region. And this includes transportation corridors and energy initiatives that benefit multiple member states. So yeah, would you like to add?
Yeah, Shazib, thank you for the insights. So I would also like to talk about the financial sector in South Africa, and I would like to say like South Africa is an interesting case because when we think about developing countries, the stock market participation in those countries are very low because the people don't have the financial capital to invest, and majority of the investors are actually those who are young because they like to take risk, and those who have financial capital. So because of this, developing countries don't really have the interest in the stock market. But South Africa is an interesting example because it has one of the highest stock market active participation rates in Africa, which shows that financially speaking, the financial sector in South Africa is really big. Araf mentioned that the Johannesburg Stock Exchange, the JSE, is over the market cap of JSE is over $1 trillion, which is really a huge number because, like compared to Bangladesh, the Dhaka Stock Exchange market cap is only about $73 billion, but South Africa, which has comparable GDP as to Bangladesh, has like over more than 10 times the market cap of the Dhaka Stock Exchange, which shows that the financial market in South Africa is very strong. And one of the reasons is because I would say the economy of South Africa is very diversified, and like the diversification has been essential for the sustained growth, especially after the apartheid era, where South Africa has many sources of GDP, revenue, and income. And since the end of the apartheid in 1994, South Africa's GDP has grown at around 3 to 5% every year, and this is really good for the investor as it improves the investor confidence. And by 2023, South Africa's GDP as of 2024, not 2023, is the largest in Africa, which shows that the South Africa is a prime example of how growth of a country in many sectors can lead to is like positively correlated to the growth of the financial sector as well. And under Ramaphosa, the government has actually invested a lot in the South African Stock Exchange, which is one of the reasons why the South African Stock Exchange is worth over $1 trillion as of market cap. And I would also like to talk about the currency of South Africa. The South African rand, if I'm not mistaken, the South African rand is actually really valuable, like one of the highest valued currency in Africa compared to other currencies, because the South African rand is actually considered it's basically considered the US dollar of like the African continent, because the South African rand is a currency that is usually what the investors have confidence in. The South African rand, which is also like abbreviated as ZAR, was like introduced in 1961 as the official currency of South Africa, and since 1994 the rand's performance has really like shown how South Africa has economically improved. And for example, in 1994 the rand to the USD, if I'm not mistaken, was around $35, but currently $1 is now around 18 South African rand, which shows that the currency of South Africa has actually improved and is comparable to the dollar almost. So yeah, like I would like to say so basically my point is that the South African economy is growing at a very good rate compared to other countries in South Africa, and as a result of this economic growth in the GDP, the financial market is also growing, and also the South African currency is also very strong now. So Makuei, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, okay. Thank you all before. Like, I almost went off topic because I almost left a bit. I currently am repressed. So you guys have really shared like a really necessary insight that is really impacting South Africa rate of economy and how it has grown. Currently, South Africa is also one of the countries that has been balanced in Africa that is a bit stable, modernized, and having that kind of system that is not that good to other systems in African countries. And one of the crucial things that South Africa also investing in, there are many official organizations that are working in South Africa, that are based in South Africa, that we really like earning tax from it, and are benefiting from these companies. Like we have Action Aid, we have Doctors Without Borders, we have Global Integrity, we have One International, we have Oxfam, World Vision, we have World Wildlife Plan, we have synagogues. There's so many NGOs that are working currently in South Africa that many of the people in South Africa are being employed in, and South Africa also getting the tax in daily that is really benefiting from it. And also South Africa is also having growth in kind of resources that they have. South Africa is also one of the countries that is having rich resources, even though like there's kind of even though there's work that is taking place between them and China, then sometimes it lead to an ethical work that accountability might not be certain, but still South Africa is doing well, its economy is okay. Even though the South African rand is a bit stable, it's not like other currencies in Africa, still based on South African perspective, they still believe that the rand has differentiate and the kind of the way they actually it is, they don't even expect it to be in that level. Which South African economy is a bit stable compared to the rest of African countries. They are doing a lot. They are earning from their own natural resources. They are earning from international organizations that are in, and the country is really investing a lot in its own citizens and investing a lot to at least stabilize things in the country, to at least elevate. If you go to South Africa, because South Africa is one of the it's one of the countries that the foreigners always go to every time. Okay, it attracts tourists. There are many places in South Africa that tourists only visit, and they have to at least pay for that. Then each and every time when foreigners come to the country, then they are really benefiting from it. We also have South Africa airline. South African airline is also one of the things that South African government is also benefiting from it because they're generating enough income from that is able like to at least fund or to at least support other things in the government. So these are the basic things that I would also love to add. Thank you.
So thank you for all the opinions that you have shared, Makuei, Arif Malik, and Shazib Karim. I believe that we have to end our podcast episode for today. And again, our podcast episode discussion was episode 14, South Africa's economic mosaic, balancing growth and inequality. And based on a discussion, I believe the conclusion that we have drawn is that even though there has been a lot of growth in South Africa has a very stable politics when compared to other African nations. It has also a very stable economic, you could say, economic landscape when compared to other nations, and the export and the importing nations of South Africa is also very diversified. The things that South Africa exports and imports oil is also very diversified, which highlights that South Africa as a nation is very economically stable and politically also stable. However, there has been a lot of inequality in South Africa due to its past racial segregation, and for this reason, a lot of wealth is concentrated among the black South Africans, among the white South Africans, and while the black South Africans are not able to experience a lot of South Africa's growth and economic prosperity, which is very unfortunate. So I believe that's the conclusion that we can draw from our discussion. Is that a conclusion that Makuei, Arif, and Shazib, that's the conclusion that all of you agree with? Am I right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd agree with that conclusion. Yeah, I'd agree, Arif.
And thank you again, Makuei, for coming to today's episode. We really enjoyed talking to you, and I hope that you enjoyed talking to us. And are there any final words that you would like to say before we depart for today?
Okay, thank you so much. I really enjoyed to be here. I have been educated. I learned from you, and you guys are really incredible awesome. So you provide much insight when they you remember being in South Africa. You do a lot of research that are worth it and valid. So thank you for all. I really enjoyed this. I would also love to at least meet with you in coming days.
Thank you, Makuei. Thank you, Makuei, for all the insights that you have shared with us today. And I would again like to thank the audience for joining into today's episode, which was episode 14, South Africa's economic mosaic, balancing growth and inequality, with Makuei, Aye, Akot, Majhok. And I believe that the audience, I hope that you enjoyed our episode and our discussion today. And we hope to see you next week with another very interesting guest speaker with another very interesting episode. Thank you. See you next week. Goodbye for today.